Well, hello, listeners.
Nice.
Is that a good start?
Huh?
Is that a good way to start?
Oh, it's brilliant. It's
Yeah.
what I liked about it, how organic it was. Right.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Magic Morning Wood with your host. I'm Ron Scott, and he is.
I'm Clive Davies.
Oh, good flow in there into that. I set you up for to finish the sentence, and you started your own sentence. So welcome back to the wood, Clive. How are you?
I am fine. How are you, Ron?
I am fine too. Thank you. I'm fine. Thank you, and you. Great. Welcome back, and. Yeah, so we are still social distancing, as luck would have it. So I hope all of you are staying safe at home there as well. All right. What's up? What's going on these days, Clive? What's up? How are you?
I'm good. I mean, nothing special. How about you? Is there anything kind of wood related or non-wood related that you want to share?
Maybe nothing specific, but did you have any emails or any correspondence about our episode with Gino or anything? No.
No.
I see.
I'm sure we have millions of fans. They're just all a bit shy.
Right.
Yes. It also probably doesn't help that we forget to put the contact information.
Right. Do we have contact information?
Well, there's that as well.
We probably should get some. We keep saying that. We probably should get an email address, But
yeah, we've been mentioning that for a while now. So
yeah, let's work on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, within a year or something, I'm sure we'll get some.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We've been doing this 3 years now, right? So.
Well, someone's downloading. Well, a few people are downloading the episodes in dribs and drabs, and I've noticed the older episodes, the download count slowly gets higher, and then so
really?
Yeah, so whoever is listening to this, they seem to have gone back to episode 1, and then slowly you'll notice episode 1 will go, and then episode 2 and episode 3. So I don't know. It seems as if someone's interested in it, and they.
Okay. Well, welcome if you're interested. Well, thanks for listening, and perhaps someday we'll get an email address so you can talk to us.
Yeah, something to look forward to.
Yeah. So, we'll keep watching the space for that development.
Right.
So anyway, today we're going off of our last episode with Gino was a bit of a one-off. So it sort of doesn't count in our I'm not counting that in our current setup, the way we're doing things, where we're choosing a film and then having a relation, our reaction film to that, right?
Yes, it was kind of an island off of the main.
Yeah, so Gino's was sort of like a one-off, the one with episode. So what this episode is a reaction to the episode before, that we had, which was remind our listeners, which was yours was the.
So when you say remind the listeners, you mean remind you.
Remind me, yeah. Remind me, and I'm listening, so I'm a listener. So
right. Well, I believe so. Well, actually, I don't know because you haven't told me yet. But
it was American Psycho and Dirty Harry were mine, which was a reaction to your
Public Enemy. So I'm guessing
Public Enemy.
You're going from Dirty Harry, right?
Yes. So you had Public Enemy, and I had American Psycho and Dirty Harry, and so now this episode will be my. Loose connection to Dirty Harry, because that was the last episode.
Clear as mud.
Huh?
Clear as mud.
Yes. So, right. Anyway, so my first choice or my only choice today, I guess today, it was the 1986 thriller Manhunter. I assume you've seen this before, Clive?
Several times, yes. Was this the
Several
first
times.
watch for you then?
It was the first watch, actually. Yeah, surprisingly. Yeah. Again, I was trying to find something good to react to Dirty Harry, and there's a billion cop dramas and cat and mouse, catching a serial killer, kind of thing. So cop that plays by his own rules. There's a million ways. Or I was thinking of. I also was considering doing just another Clint Eastwood movie, or
right.
I briefly considered Any Which Way But Loose.
Of all the Clint Eastwood films, is that a favorite of your childhood? Or
no, I've never seen that one either. So I was listening to another podcast where they were talking about it, and one person loved it and the other person hated it. So I was thinking about possibly doing it.
Is that the first? And is that because I always get confused between Every Which Way, but is it Every Which Way But Loose, Any Which Way But Loose, and then the other one is Any Which Way You Can? I think it's Every Which Way But Loose, and then Any Which Way You Can, right? Or is it?
Was the second one, I think, wasn't it?
Every Which Way You Can. I can never remember which is which.
I think Loose was first, but I mean, I would have gone for the first one. I would have made sure I looked that up, I guess. But,
okay, all right.
I think Loose was first, but
have you haven't seen either of those then?
No. I remember hearing about it because, and again, I've listened to this other podcast and they're talking about Clint Eastwood and a monkey. I was like, what? An orangutan, right? So I think that just sounds so. I had no idea that he had done a movie with an orangutan. It seems such an outlier.
I'd always assumed that Clint Eastwood and orangutan was like, part of everyone's childhood kind of thing. But,
I just missed that one, so it just wasn't on my watched list when I was younger. So
they were always on British TV when I was a kid. Like
really?
Always Duel. They were like they were like that. Like just always seemed to always be on.
Oh, okay. Have you? So you've seen those?
Yes.
Yeah. Wait, are you glad that I didn't choose it then?
Well, it's been such a long time. Actually, I wouldn't mind taking another look at them. I'm sure they would inspire interesting conversation. So there you go.
Okay.
Anyone for the list.
Right. So anyway, that was a possibility I was thinking because I thought maybe there would be something at least to talk about with those. But in my further research of movies that are similar to Dirty Harry or catching serial killers type of thing, I came across this one, and it was one that it was sort of on my I'd like to see list, and one I thought might inspire some discussion out of her. So I chose Manhunter, the 1986 film. Directed by Michael Mann, and also written and directed by Michael Mann, based on the book by Thomas Harris. The book based on the book Red Dragon.
Yes.
So a little bit of trivia: this movie was originally going to be called Red Dragon, but then they changed it at the last minute because of another movie that had dragon in the title being released around the same time, and the producer was afraid that people would think it was a kung fu movie, so they changed it to the title Manhunter, which most of the cast have been public in saying they thought it was a very generic, shitty title.
Well, I mean, Red Dragon's a very generic, shitty title, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, but
I think it's a perfectly acceptable title.
Well, anyway, that's just a bit of trivia I thought about her. So anyway, starring William Peterson, who is famous these days from CSI. He's Mr. CSI, which I guess was actually a TV show which was probably, I guess, ostensibly inspired by this movie and by his performance in this movie. Yeah. So
I'm not that familiar with CSI, but his character, is it quite similar, like in tone?
I didn't watch a lot of CSI myself. I would watch like one-offs every once in a while, but I don't think it was that similar. But it was the idea that he's like the guy that catches the bad guys, and by using the crime scene investigation and stuff like that. And I don't think his character was a little different. I think he was a little more of a relaxed type in CSI, but I think it was definitely based off.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you'd have difficulty being more intense, really.
Yeah, so intense all the time. Yeah. So, but yeah, but I do think it was loosely based on. Yeah. So, and he definitely probably got that role because the CSI role, and CSI was even developed because of this movie and movies like this. So
he's from what William Peterson's one of those guys. Like I knew him because of Manhunter, and then he was also in the To Live in Die in LA just before this as well, and then hadn't seen him in much of anything, and then he's in CSI. He seems to be one of those from what I've read as well. He's very much in love with the theatre, right? So I think
he's a theatre guy.
More so his screen. I mean, he's been in stuff, but probably nowhere near the amount of stuff that he's been offered. I would have guessed.
Right. Yeah.
Because he is pretty good, and he's in some kind of iconic things, obviously, and but you get the feeling he's probably more in demand, and he might turn a lot of stuff down because I think he film here and there to pay the bills so he can do theatre or.
But I get you. I mean, he was on CSI for like 15 years, so I imagine that CSI kind of afforded him some sort of security. A regular paycheck that he could use to do stuff that he wanted to do, which is probably more theater stuff, which is why we don't really see him that much.
And I think that's something that might actually he might have in common with his co-star here, Tom Noonan, as well. Actually, who we'll get.
Well, Tom Noonan. Actually, I was going to get to Tom Noonan in a second, but Tom Noonan I've seen in a couple of other things.
Yes, me too. I'm a big fan actually, but I know he's a really big theater guy as well.
Oh, is he? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yes, obviously, as you brought up, Tom Noonan is also in there as Francis Dollar Hyde, who is the killer in this movie. Spoiler, I guess. sort of a spoiler, not really, but.
We will spoil the fuck out of this film and the other ones. So as usual, beware. If you haven't seen it, watch them. And then.
Not really a spoiler because he's sort of introduced as the killer around halfway through the movie. So.
Right. But just in general.
Yeah. Also, Joan Allen comes up as the blind love interest for Tom Noonan, and Brian Cox in the first cinematic representation of Dr. Hannibal Lecter, which of course is made more famous by Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs, and the remake of this movie, Red Dragon, which is actually called Red Dragon, and also Hannibal. But the first time Hannibal Lecter was on film was this movie. Played by Brian Cox, who you and I are also big fans of.
Yes.
Brian Cox been most recently been in the TV show we were watching.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Succession.
Yeah, Succession. Yeah, so he was awesome in Succession. He's a very, very different portrayal of of Hannibal Lecter than Anthony Hopkins.
Or as he is in this film.
What's that?
Or Lector, as he is.
Lector, with a K for some reason. Yeah, they changed the spelling strangely. Also, they changed the spelling of Francis Dollar Hyde, the serial killer.
Right.
Which is, odd. Maybe they thought people couldn't read it the other way. I don't know. I have to ask Michael Mann that. Also, Kim Greist as William Peterson's wife. Dennis Farina pops up too as a cop as well. So and so 1986. So what did you have to say about this movie, Clive?
Well, what's the film? What's the film about? Very briefly, because
you want to go? Okay, briefly. Briefly, it's a serial killer, cat and mouse. William Peterson is a former FBI agent who is the person who caught Hannibal Lecter. And Hannibal Lecter, when he caught Hannibal Lecter, he actually was stabbed and attacked by Hannibal Lecter, and he's got a bit of a PTSD from his time with Hannibal Lecter, and he got stabbed and attacked by him, so that he's kind of recovered and retired, and he gets dragged out of retirement to come help catch this new serial killer who the media has dubbed the Tooth Fairy because he ends up biting his victims. And so he comes and he comes to help him catch this guy, and in the process he goes to meet Hannibal Lecter to help him get into the mindset of this new guy, and sort of facing his own fears in order to do it. And then so it's him kind of using the crime scene and trying to put himself into the mindset of this serial killer, trying to catch them. And as well, actually, it's different from a lot of these types of movies in that it sort of attempts to humanize the serial killer himself a lot, where it shows a lot of his side of it, and he ends up meeting this blind woman and falling in love with her, and sort of having a relationship, and through the end, the things he's going through, trying to make himself better and dealing with his demons and stuff like that. And anyway, and then it sort of comes to a head, and then at the end, they find him and catch him, and there's a big shootout, kind of climactic scene at the end. And William Peterson, like Will Graham, kills the serial killer in the shootout.
Yeah,
it's sort of like it's a relatively standard, detective serial killer drama. But it's got some interesting things about it. I think it'll stand out a bit.
I mean, typically of Mann as well, it is. I mean, Mann is, in general, and not all his films. We did talk, of course, Michael Mann.
Woman, too.
When we did the Jericho Mile.
Right.
What did you say? Did I miss a hilarious joke there? Ron?
Yeah. I said, you said man is like this, and I said woman is too. But
That's pretty good. So, hang on. Let me just.
let that soak in for you. It'll be funny in about 10 minutes when the nuance will wash over you.
I'm just gonna pick myself up off the floor and soldier on. So yeah, what I was gonna say was with Michael Mann, a lot of his stuff is pure kind of cinema as well, right? So a lot of the appeal is maybe slightly difficult to convey in words, right? I think that's the one thing that seems to link most of the best Michael Mann films is they're rather than dialogue or story driven, they're more, well, they are story driven, but it's visual storytelling, it's audio visual storytelling without too much in the way of people kind of giving you exposition and stuff like that. Would you say that's fair to say with this?
Right. Yeah. I definitely think this is especially this movie. He's very visual. It's all about the visuals and the atmosphere.
Yes, absolutely.
Than it is about the. I mean, the story itself is not. It's not that interesting, to be honest. It's just sort of, it's pretty run of the mill anyway. I mean, it's not uninteresting, but it's not there's nothing a lot new in terms of a story here. But I think it's definitely what they've done with the movie. He definitely took it in directions you wouldn't see it going, right?
Yeah, I think
because I'll talk about this in a little bit, but I also wanted to say that I also watched Red Dragon,
right,
2002 remake of this just in preparation for today. Which is also which they remade with Ed Norton and Anthony Hopkins because they wanted Anthony Hopkins to continue his role, doing all of the Hannibal actor, and it's a very different film.
Right. Yes, I did have a chance to rewatch that for this, but I remember it being very, very different. I closer in tone to the post Silence of the Lambs kind of series template, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll get a little bit to what I think about it because for me, like I said, I've seen this a few times and I've kind of layered onto it over the years. So I would have originally seen the film a couple of times, and then I would have. Have you read the book? Have you read Red Dragon?
I haven't read any of the books. No.
I read Red Dragon and then watched the film again. So it's a little bit difficult for me to. Because there's stuff in the book, that obviously that doesn't make it to the screen. So sometimes when I was watching this again this time, I was thinking, I wasn't sure, is this entirely clear to the audience exactly what's happening, or do I only know because I've had the gaps filled in by reading the book and from watching it again and whatever. So I wasn't quite sure I was maybe giving the film. But I remember the first time I saw it, it certainly it blew me away straight away, but it was on that level of just a cinema. I mean, I'd love to see it on a big screen, I have to say. So how did it strike you, Ron? This was the first time watch for you, right? So
yeah, well, definitely, it was pretty creepy. It was did quite a good job with the atmosphere of it, which I thought a lot. Actually, you could attribute to the soundtrack. The soundtrack also, I think, is also notable. I wanted to talk about the soundtrack by.
I forgot to write this down as well.
Oh, you didn't write it down? Yeah. So by the soundtrack is by John Williams.
Is it?
Yes, the soundtrack is actually by John Williams, which I thought that's very odd that John Williams did this. And actually, as I was watching it, it was the same year as Star Wars was released, and there are actually elements in the soundtrack I could hear that sounded very similar to the Star Wars soundtrack.
Ron,
yeah,
I see what you've done there. You've accidentally started talking about Black Sunday.
Oh, did I? Oops. Yeah, I thought it. Okay, sorry. I've jumped up there. Sorry. Whoops. I was like, wait a second. I knew it was no. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. Got confused in my head. Yeah, I've watched too many movies this week. Okay, sorry. No, the soundtrack was by Michael Rubini. Right.
There we go. Yeah.
Michael Rubini. Okay, Michael Rubini. And so the Michael Rubini soundtrack was very
and the Red.
Huh?
Michael Rubini and the Reds. Because I remember the screen credit being an odd screen. It sounded more like a band. Like
right.
It was either Michael Rubini and the Reds or the Reds and Michael Rubini. And to be honest, I don't know Michael Rubini.
Oh,
maybe I should. But
right. No, I don't. I don't know. I don't know what he did. Let's see. What else did he do? He also did. He didn't do very much.
What a TV.
He did.
By the looks of things.
What's that?
A lot of TV stuff by the looks of things.
Yeah, not very much at all.
Yeah.
Hollywood Homicide. Okay, yeah, not very much. But I thought the soundtrack was very effective. It was real 80s, very synth heavy.
Yes.
Discordant. Kind of like it was very. It definitely was atmospheric, right? It definitely helped you. So I thought the soundtrack helped a lot.
The soundtrack and the sound design as well, I think. Like everything audio in it is again typical of Michael Mann. And yeah, like you said, the score selections, he's always good with stuff like this, I think. And it's particularly stuff that's perfect for the cinema as well. Like some of this stuff you would never allow in your house under normal circumstances, but it works in terms of like that. The one misstep for me was whatever that fucking thing is during the end. The heart, give me your heartbeat, give me listen to you.
the 80s pop song,
but just about gets away with it within the context of this film.
Yeah.
Normally, you'd.
Well, I'm not sure necessarily. Like the choice of songs were sometimes a little bit off-putting. Like even like the In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida was a little bit. I mean, there's a reason why they chose it because it was apparently like connected to some other serial killer in real life or something like that. But still, if you don't know that connection, the choice is a little bit like, why did they choose this song of every song? It's a little bit.
I thought that was pretty good. I suppose the only thing against it might be its over familiarity with it. So you automatically go, that's Cyan Butterfly.
Yeah. But it also kind of takes you out a little bit. It wasn't terrible, but it sort of was a little bit. It made me notice it, which is kind of like, wait a second, well, why is it doing that? So I would necessarily say that the choice of all the recognizable songs were, I wouldn't say that they were all necessarily great or whatever, but definitely the score itself was quite interesting. As well, the really other big feature of this movie that's notable is the use of filters. So it's really, really, really filter heavy, and they use a lot of filters in this movie. And I guess it's
shot by
I was reading it up.
Dante Spinotti. That's the
Spinotti, yeah.
photographer.
And that they're case specific, you know, like, so when I wrote it down, but I can't remember what it was, but when it's the FBI and his wife, then they have like a blue filter. But when it's the more the darker stuff, then they use green or reds or something like that, right? So so it's a real like color heavy. It's very heavy movie. So it's.
But it's interesting as well. I think again, Michael Mann's one of the few people who can get away with stuff like that, because he kind of has a good sense. Whereas some people they I think they fall in love with the idea of that, but don't quite know how to do it properly.
The execution is not that good, but
it's just like, oh really, you know, it's like. But again, Michael Mann knows his craft, right? I mean, regardless of what some might think of his movies or not, I mean, you can't fault him. He's a real craftsman, I think. Right.
So I thought it worked quite well today. So in this movie, so the mixture of the filters with the discordant synth score, I thought made for quite an unsettling feel as you're watching it, which helped a lot. So I thought it was overall, the atmosphere and the tone of the movie was very gripping.
Yeah,
and the performance is all.
He's got to be one of the key influences on Nicholas Winding Refn as well.
No, I think so. Yeah, definitely. You could see that a lot in like Neon Demon and stuff like that. Yeah, it's very similar to this type of movie. Yeah. And I think the performances were all really strong. I thought William Peterson was really good. He was very. He's almost creepy in his own way. But he's sort of like. Yeah. So which I didn't expect, because I was used to Silence of the Lambs with Jodie Foster being like the person you're rooting for, you're seeing it through her eyes, but you're almost not really sure what to make of this FBI guy who's so damaged that you're not really sure, and it's. So it's.
His skill is as well, like you were saying, the PTSD thing, but it's not just that he was attacked by Hannibal Lecter; it's the fact that he was inside his head for so long. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a few exchanges between him and Brian Cox's Hannibal Lecter, where Hannibal Lecter is kind of goading him and saying, "Look, clearly there's a bit of this in you. Why don't you give yourself over to it?" Kind of thing, right? Because William Peterson's as good as he is because he can relate to a scary degree, I guess. Like,
you get the impression that he's a very like a thin line away from just becoming one of them, right? So
absolutely, and like he says at one point, he says to Hannibal Lecter, because Hannibal Lecter wants to know why he caught him, and he just says, "Well, you're insane. That's the only difference. I'm not."
Yeah, that was your disadvantage, is you're insane. Right?
Yeah. I'm almost insane, but not quite. And so there's that whole pull in it. So, like you said, it's a very, what I like about this film is it's really boiled down to its essentials. Like, bam, straight away there's some scary killer at large, and then straight away you've got the fantastic Dennis Farina trying to convince William Peterson to come back, and William Peterson's living in this implausibly amazing house at the beach, and right on the beach, right?
Yeah,
like,
right on the beach. Yeah.
It looks amazing, but I'm wondering how practical it would actually be to live there if there was like a storm or something. I mean, it's right on the beach.
Yeah.
Not in a little bit. No, bang on,
right
like
on the
5 meters from the shoreline or something. I don't know who lives there, but I'm guessing they must have a lot of insurance. But
or it's one of those places that never have storms. I mean, it's like LA or something. It's
a Hollywood living space that no one actually lives in anywhere.
Well, but to be fair, it's actually very similar to the one they used in the remake Red Dragon as well, that Ed Norton lives in.
Okay.
Ed Norton, it's very similar in terms of the beach location, but also Ed Norton's was even bigger. They've got like this bungalow and stuff too, right? So it's
Well, I think in the book he does live
on the beach. So I'm assuming that because that in fact that it was carried over, that it's part of the character in the book. So
so obviously that's his safe place. That's with his wife Kim Grace from Brazil, who's kind of like Glenn Close's nice sister.
Yes, I thought that too. I thought she really looks like Glenn Close a lot. Yeah. So.
Yeah, her sister, in another cinematic world, she's off threatening Michael Douglas's family.
No, maybe she's doing Michael Douglas's brother.
Right. Yeah. So and he's living with his son and all that, and that's his. That's this. Okay, this is me, like, in a way, not being true to his own character in a way, as Hannibal. He's deliberately suppressing his talent in a way, and his dark side and all that, because it's better for him and it's better for the world. Right. But yeah, so obviously Dennis Farina comes calling and he has to go, and he's very reticent, because it's not just, oh, I can't be bothered, or it's like, oh fuck, I don't want to go back to that place, because in a way I really do want to go back to this place, and getting back out of it again is going to be the
exactly. It's not even necessarily that like I don't want to do it. Is that I'd like to help you out, but at the same time I'm afraid to go there because I don't know if I can get out of it again. Right?
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah, and it's all done with even less exposition than we've kind of explained it. I mean, you get the idea, but it's done with a kind of modicum of restraint. I think, like, there's not so much. People never over-explain. They just go to the edge of saying what they need to, and then back off, and someone just looks, or it's all looks or glares or half-spoken stuff. So, which I really appreciate, and that's why I was wondering if that worked, if that came across totally for you, because I filled in some of that stuff from reading the book, right? So obviously
I didn't have any trouble.
It comes through on the screen, right?
Yeah, I didn't have any trouble understanding what was happening most of the time. So
okay,
that I can think of. So, also, I wanted to notable is Tom Noonan. Talk about Tom Noonan. I'm actually a longtime fan of Tom Noonan. I've seen him in a bunch of stuff, and I don't think there's anyone on the planet that's creepier than Tom Noonan.
He's great. He's great.
He's really good. Yeah. So
you see him pop up in things sometimes as well, just like small bits, and he just blows everyone else off. I remember seeing him. Speaking of Glenn Close, did you ever watch that TV series Damages?
I saw the first season. Yeah, was he on that?
Yes, for a while in like one of the seasons, third or fourth season.
Okay, maybe I missed him.
It was a good show overall, actually. I liked Damages. I thought it was very good. But I remember him turning up in a couple of episodes, and he's just effortlessly amazing. Like unlike a lot of, I've never seen him on stage, but I'm assuming he must be an awesome stage actor. I know he's got a good reputation. And sometimes stage actors they don't quite know how to underplay for the screen, right? But Tom Noonan is just
he's
spectacular.
He's really like understated in everything he does. Yeah, it's like he's so like nuanced and just like he doesn't there's no effort with what he's doing. He's just real like relaxed and he just lets it happen. Yeah, but it just I saw him most recently he was in the TV version of 12 Monkeys.
Oh, okay. Is he in that?
Yeah, he was in the TV show version, which I really enjoyed. Actually, I liked that show quite a lot. And he was the other creepy guy in that show too. And he's just he's always awesome. He's really quite good. Yeah, and he's also just excellent in this movie. Yeah, he's like, the only thing that I found myself a little bit hard to buy with him in this movie was that, of course, the character is supposed to be really, really, really strong, like a bodybuilder. And I know that apparently Tom Noonan was doing a lot of like weightlifting and stuff to prepare for the role, but I never once got the impression that he was a very muscular guy in the movie. He never. He always just seems he's very thin, right? He's
slender looking, isn't he?
He's very slender. So that was the only thing. And also he, I don't know if maybe I couldn't tell in the movie, but it looked like he now is quite old. He's like he's like 70 almost, right? And he's balding with white hair and stuff like that. But it looks like that's what he had then too. in the movie, but apparently it's blonde, but he looks like he just has gray hair, like he's just balding with gray hair to me. But
yes, that was a bit of an odd one when they kept, because they mentioned it a few times how
yeah, that he has blonde hair,
and I
but
would
he didn't look blonde. He looked
like
like he had white hair or gray hair. So and so I was kind of like, yeah. So he looks older, which didn't matter, but it's sort of like the physical description of what he was supposed to be didn't really fit into what he actually was. So that was the only thing that didn't quite work out. But I can totally forgive it considering he was.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think that I was looking it up. I think I think there was quite a few kind of lost in the edit scenes in this film. But
well, I guess the other, I mean, you can comment because you've read the book, but I guess a big part of the character in the book is the tattoos, right? That he's got the red dragon tattoo on his back and stuff like that, right? And he's supposed to be like a bodybuilder and stuff like that. And which apparently they did in this movie, and then ended up cutting it all because they thought it looked cheesy or something.
And I could have sworn they were in the movie, but apparently that they were like production stills and stuff at the time. That's what I must have seen. And then after reading the book, retroactively put it back into the film. Yeah, I thought there was like a scene in this where you see his full body, and then of course you get slightly confused between both the books and the films of Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs as well, because
Red
Dragon and Silence of the Lambs is kind of the same story, right? It's someone hunting Dracula and they go and get help from Hannibal Lecter.
Help from Hannibal Lecter, yeah.
I mean,
good job, Thomas Harris.
Have you read Silence of the Lambs, by the way?
I haven't read any of Thomas Harris actually. So.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's worth mentioning. Red Dragon is a brilliant read. I mean, I would highly recommend. It's a real unput-downable read.
Page turner.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely his best book. Silence of the Lambs is pretty good. It's fun, but Red Dragon is the one. If you're going to read one, Thomas Harris, it's Red Dragon, I think.
How close is the book to this movie, other than the tattoos?
Oh, they're. If memory serves, it's been a while since I read it, but no, I think it's all fairly close. I mean,
because
in the book, and
because I was saying that I saw Red Dragon as well, the remake, and the script is quite similar. Like there's like right down to the point where there are certain scenes, even lines are exactly the same. So. I got the impression that it was pretty close to what the original text must have been. So
yes, I mean Red Dragon. I mean, I suppose we'll get into it a bit more. You will, because you rewatched it. But if I remember correctly, Red Dragon struck me as actually not a bad film in itself. Like serviceable, nothing wrong with it. Kind of the law of diminishing returns, as Silence of the Lambs is really good. Hannibal pretty good, and then in that direction, but certainly not bad, but almost like why bother when Manhunter exists, kind of thing.
Well, I know why, because it's because of Anthony Hopkins. Is that they did Anthony Hopkins, and he was so popular as Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal that let's do all of the Hannibal Lecter movies, and he's got to do this one too. So they had to like de-age him at the beginning and stuff.
Right, to give a kind of series consistent. Oh, okay.
It's like here's all of the Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter series. Basically.
Yeah. But you'd think they want to step up and like if you're going to do that, well, let's really make it the definitive version.
Yeah.
But it kind of already exists, right? I mean,
they even went so far as to give Anthony Hopkins top billing in this movie, even though he's very much a supporting character.
Right, because Manhunter is like I suppose I can see it's out. It's not part of that series, and it's kind of it's more a Michael Mann film than a Thomas Harris, Anthony Hopkins as Lecter film.
Right.
But it just seems like one of those like I don't know, one of those things which is like dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and you're just like, just leave it alone. It's fine. You don't have to kind of.
Well, I totally understand why they did it because everyone loves Anthony Hopkins and Hannibal Lecter. Yes. There's another one. Let's do it. Let's do that one too. It'll make people go see it, and they did, right? So, but I agree that Manhunter is far superior to Red Dragon. So, So they didn't really need to in that way. What did you think of Brian Cox's Hannibal Lecter? Lector.
He's an interesting one, actually. It's difficult to tell. I can't remember from the book now, but I think, and of course, before even, let me get this. Would I have? Yes, I'm guessing I probably would have seen the original Silence of the Lambs before I saw Manhunter.
Okay.
Maybe. So yeah. So for me, obviously Anthony Hopkins is Hannibal Lecter, as he is for most people.
Right.
Right. But I think he probably the Hannibal Lecter in the book probably is closer to the Anthony Hopkins version in a way. Because
the Anthony Hopkins one.
Yeah, the Brian Cox Hannibal Lecter is an odd. I'd like to see Brian Cox do him again, actually, because there's not enough of him in here to judge him by it. He almost seems like, and this might just be the difference between Brian Cox and Anthony Hopkins, but Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter seems like a refined, a man of fine tastes,
right,
and almost kind of condescending to the rest of the world, and but in a kind of way, very gentle until he decides to eat your nose or whatever, right? Like,
right.
Until that point, he's not going to get into a bar fight, or something. Whereas Brian Cox's Hannibal Lecter seemed a bit more like a thug or something. Like,
yeah, he was. Yeah, that's But he had that Scottish accent too, and he was like, yeah. He seemed a little more like a hooligan than like a psychopath. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that, to be fair, that might just be Brian Cox.
Yes.
Through,
well, also Brian Cox, I think, based it off of an actual real serial killer at the time, and of course he didn't have Anthony Hopkins to be playing off of, right? So because they hadn't been done yet, so so he was the one that created the character. It was just a different character. I think he just didn't take it in the same way. So,
but it's very difficult for obviously a poor Silence of the Lambs world to kind of judge it by itself, right? I mean, good. Brian Cox is always good, but But I think the one in the book, I think Anthony Hopkins' one is probably closer to Thomas Harris's Hannibal Lecter. I think, even though if it did get progressively more cartoonish over a few films.
Yeah, right? I was going to mention that when I talk about Red Dragon too, because
and so the other thing we should probably mention as well is, so we both watched the 124-minute director's cut of Manhunter, right?
Right.
But it's an odd director's cut because there's a few extra, very, very brief scenes, right, that have been reinserted.
I don't know what had been added in this version.
Couldn't you tell? Because the
there was one scene that where the quality was different.
Yes, okay. There's like 4 or 5 of them, I think, and suddenly the sound and the image is much worse, and the sound. Yeah. So all those bits are.
I see. Okay.
But obviously they didn't have the original elements or something, which seems strange for a film which is only from 1986. I mean.
Yeah. Or that they couldn't digitally enhance it to make it look. uniform.
For whatever reason, I don't know. But and then there's been a few different bits and pieces over. So there was a main director's cut and the theatrical, and then there's different bits that have played on TV which had bits that weren't in the theatrical, but then they weren't in the direct. So you'd have to make some kind of crazy quilt composite version, I think, if you wanted.
Right.
And then that wouldn't be the director's cut. That would just be the version with the most footage in it, right? So
right.
I think with Manhunter, I think you're probably just good to go with the original theatrical, really. I mean, those little bits and stuff, I don't think
they didn't really add anything, I don't think.
No.
Yeah. So I was expecting the director's cut to maybe put the tattoo stuff back in, but no.
Right. I think the only major scene of which I remember having seen before, so it must have turned up in, I think it was in one version that had played on TV or something, or maybe the version in Japan or something. So basically, actually this is something they didn't, it was a little bit confusing in the film, is obviously Francis Dolarhyde's killing people on this lunar cycle, right? So he's planning to, so he cases out, because he kills entire families, right? And he cases out families in advance. And so we know he's hunting a family, but we don't know which one. And obviously when William Peterson catches him at the end, he can't, catch his next prey because he catches it just in time, right?
Right.
And there's a scene where he goes to the house of the family who were to be murdered, just to look at them, just to see if it's safe or whatever. And it's an odd little scene. It's just, he just knocks on the door and he scares the wife, and then the husband comes in and, oh, you're the guy. And they want to thank him and bring him in the house and everything, but he just kind of stares at them and says, sorry, I just wanted to have a look. And at first I was like, who are these people? I wasn't quite sure who they were. But they're basically the family he saved.
Right.
Yeah. So I thought that was quite. I think that would be the only missing bit that was worth reinstating.
Worth watching.
But even if it's not there, it doesn't really matter.
It didn't matter. It didn't lose anything. Yeah. So.
And you've got Patricia Charbonneau in that. I guess she's not in the other edit. She's just kind of out. Yeah. So you got of course Dennis Farina, who I love. Dennis Farina. Yeah,
Dennis Farina is always great. He's always a
former Chicago police detective. Maybe I'm not sure he was.
Oh, was he? He was a real cop. Oh, really? I didn't know that.
In fact, I think he got into movies via Michael Mann, because I think he was. Because Michael Mann's a Chicago guy as well, right? William Peterson's a Chicago guy. And I think maybe for Michael Mann's first, his feature debut he made after the Jericho Mile, Thief with James Caan, which I think William Peterson is in as well, which I almost chose as my reaction to this, actually. Because that have you ever seen Thief?
No, I haven't.
Great film. I think Dennis Farina was like a creative consultant. And then over the years, he was creative consultant on things like, I think, like Heat and Miami Vice. And of course, he was in Crime Story around the same time as this, right?
Right.
Which Dennis Farina was the star of that show, created by Michael Mann. So, and then he got this whole acting career.
Right, out of it.
Yeah. And then you've also got Stephen Lang is in this as well as the journalist for the National Tatler.
Right.
Who has a great death scene.
Great, yeah.
Set off fire. That's one of my favorite scenes. Frankie Faison's in it. Chris Elliott, did you notice Chris Elliott?
Yeah, Chris Elliott. He was in the police. Yeah. Strange choice there.
Marshall Bell, Bill Smitrovich. So there's lots of little familiar faces. Yeah, and but like you said though, it's all about the mood, it's all about the tone, and some scenes are just, they really play, like one scene actually that got me this time, I'm not quite sure why, was the tiger scene.
Oh yeah.
So there's the scene where Tom Noonan takes blind Joan Allen to basically stroke like a sedated tiger, right? And that's all, it just plays out, it's just her stroking this tiger and kind of beautiful, and Tom Noonan looks on, and that scene's just amazing. There's something about that scene. I was almost crying watching that scene. I have no idea.
Yeah.
It just had this power, right? It's fantastic, and it ties into the tattoos, right? Because if I remember from the book, the tattoos are based on the paintings of William Blake, right? So it's the
right, yes,
tiger burning bright poem thing. So yeah. But no, this still, I thought this film was fantastic the first time I saw it, and I pretty much thought so every other time I've seen it, and it still holds up for me. I think it's a bit of a modern classic. What do you reckon? Yeah,
I'm glad I chose it. I'm glad I watched it. Yes, it was a lot of good stuff in there. Briefly, I can talk about the Red Dragon, and in comparison to Red Dragon.
Yes, please.
So
I can't really remember. In fact, I'm gonna bring. I didn't have a chance to watch it again. I'm gonna bring up. I think I reviewed it in the book, so I'm gonna bring it up here and have a look at it while you go ahead.
Okay. So I watched Red Dragon, which is same story, same. A lot of the scenes were exactly the same. It still had the tiger scene, had a lot of the same scenes. But very different, different actors, different takes on a lot of the characters, and a couple of things were quite different. including the ending, which was very different.
Okay.
So this one has Ed Norton as Will Graham, and I'm a big Ed Norton fan. I love Ed Norton, but he was far overshadowed by William Peterson in this. It was just not. It was just not that interesting for him as a role. I think he played a very kind of, it was just Ed Norton. It was Ed Norton. It was Ed Norton playing Ed Norton a little bit, and he was just sort of very relaxed and yeah, I'm Ed Norton. But he didn't have any of the weight or the PTSD or the the damage that William Peterson had. It was just, he seemed just sort of like he was just okay, yeah, sure, I'll come help these guys, yeah, sir. And I think that left a lot out of it, was that he just didn't have the he wasn't as damaged as he should have been, right? So I think it didn't really.
Right.
So that was a big part of it. And Princess Dollarhide, the serial killer, was played in this place by Ray Fiennes. Ray Fiennes, Voldemort himself.
Right.
Who had more of the body in it than so he had he was a bodybuilder. He definitely had worked out for it and stuff.
Okay.
And he had the tattoos, had all that kind of stuff.
Maybe I'm remembering the tattoos from Red Dragon then.
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah. So he definitely had it in there and stuff. So they put it back in there and stuff like that. And Ray Fiennes is always good, but it just didn't have he wasn't as, he seemed a little bit more
stable.
Not stable. He played up the insanity a little bit more.
Okay.
To the point, it was almost like a multiple personality disorder, like a dissociative, where he's like, I'm a little kid. Where he was sort of from like Psycho, where he's playing the grandmother who was abusing him when he was a kid and stuff. And it was just a little bit like, eye rolling a little bit at times. Where it was a little bit like, it wasn't just,
Hearing you say that now, and I was just reading back my review, and to quote myself, which is always a good thing to do, apparently I wrote here, Thomas S. Harris's novel had already been turned into the brilliant Manhunter, so I didn't expect to like this much. But it's a very good and very faithful adaptation that is different from Manhunter, as you could imagine. So hearing you say that as well, I'm thinking about how in the other thing I noticed that might be a difference between the novel and Manhunter is I get the feeling in the original novel and Silence of the Lambs as well, the Francis Dollarhide character, I think we're supposed to actually think that he is kind of smart or learned, or so there's a lot more about why the tattoos and why the William Blake paintings, and the stuff about God, and so he's clearly
there was
a lot of stuff. But I get the feeling that in the book you're a little bit more on side with him, and you kind of think, oh right, okay, that's it. Oh, this is obviously he's a very clever, kind of learned, thoughtful man. Whereas in the film, I got the feeling it's more like he's just clever enough to be dangerous, but actually he's not particularly smart. Or he's not.
You mean in Manhunter?
Yes, in Manhunter. I got the feeling that he's just a very dangerous man that needs to be put. Like, there's no concessions made to him being. Actually, oddly enough, I suppose that's the way Brian Cox plays Hannibal Lecter as well, right? Kind of mad, but we're not. In a way, the problem with the Anthony Hopkins Hannibal Lecter series as they progressed was he became more like Freddy Krueger, right?
Well, not Freddy Krueger, but definitely,
so
more of a cartoon.
So we liked him in a way. You like Hannibal Lecter, and
you root for him. He's like the hero, isn't he?
And he's kind of smart. Whereas I think what Manhunter did, it brought it back down to reality. These are just really scary. So maybe Red Dragon is a more faithful adaptation, and Manhunter is just a different thing.
Again, not having read the book, I got the impression that Red Dragon probably was more faithful in terms of that it seemed like Manhunter was more about the style than it was about the story, whereas this one seemed like it was more about telling the story.
Right.
Which wasn't bad, but I'm guessing maybe the ending was closer to the ending of the book too. I don't know for a fact, but maybe you can tell me. If you
What's different about the ending?
So at the ending of Red Dragon, he's got there's no big like kind of showdown between the two of them at first. He's got Joan Allen, or he's got the blind girl, and he decides that he can't do it anymore. So he's going to shoot her, but instead turns the gun on himself, and then burns down the house at the same time. He's burning down the house and shoots himself. Okay. And so the blind girl gets out, and the house burns down, and so they think it's all over. And then Will Graham goes back home to his family. And then they get a call saying like, oh, it wasn't him after all. It was some other guy that he had just shot. So then it's sort of like a horror movie where he just pops up again, and how he's there about to kill Will Graham's family. And then there's like a big shootout of So it ends up being about his family more, because it never goes in Manhunter. It never goes. There's a little bit of a threat to his family, but then it never goes anywhere. But in Red Dragon, they actually finishes with his family, right?
That makes sense, because I was waiting for that to happen as well, watching it this time. And again, I must have got confused with the book.
Yeah,
I was which that happened.
Which I thought probably happened in the book, because it seemed like it was more of like a full circle, him doing what he was supposed to do in the first place. It seemed a little bit of a loose end. In Manhunter. Because it's sort of like Hannibal Lecter sends him, go find this guy's family and kill them all, and then they just don't do it, right? So
and it's kind of the inevitable thing as well, right? That he's brought. That's what he was afraid of doing, is he's brought his work home with him in the work.
Exactly. So in that case, I did like that ending better, in that it seemed to make more sense thematically and plot wise. Although it was a little bit sort of like a surprise, he's alive after all, like the bad guy is actually dead, not dead after all. Kind of thing. It was a little bit like a little bit too retread ground, or well trodden ground. But it was I thought in general it worked better as an ending though. So.
Yes, I suppose it's always a give and take, like when you're going to make something cinematic versus like. A good example of it in Manhunter, it looks amazing and it makes the finale thrilling and exciting. So that is a really good final extended shootout. However, if you were to think of it rationally, you're thinking, why did William Peterson jump through that window? You're like,
I actually thought that right at the time. I was like, why is he jumping through the window? Why didn't he at least go through the door? There's no reason to jump through that window.
Got a gun with him as well. At least shoot the glass out. And
also he would be like covered in cuts from the glass. He just jumped through the glass. That was a bit of like so out of left field, and it was just obviously for the sake of being spectacular, but it was ludicrous.
Yeah, that did strike me this time as well, actually. But although in the past, I have to admit, I never questioned it, because I got so caught up in the film. But no, absolutely, that was a bit of an odd one. But still, I mean, I'd much rather watch Manhunter again than Red Dragon. I could easily watch.
Yeah. But Ray Fiennes did what you were talking about, the idea of you think that Francis Dolarhyde is actually a very smart guy. There is a little bit more of that with the Ray Fiennes version, which is that you can get the impression that he actually is quite learned. He's a scholar. He's like giving papers and stuff. He's like he's like in academic journals and stuff. And then they follow through with the William Blake stuff a little bit more than they do in Manhunter, where he goes to the museum where they actually have the painting, and he actually rips it up and eats it.
That's right. Yes.
I remember. Because he's trying to save the blind girl from. It's like the painting is like talking to him, and so he's trying to eat it to save the girl from it, or that's telling him whatever.
Yes, coming back to no, I mean. Maybe not straight away because it's fresh in your mind, but in like a year or something, do yourself a favor, Ron, and read. I might even have a copy of it here. I can give it to you. It really is a fantastic read. Very
I definitely will. Yeah. Also has Harvey Keitel as the agent that tries to get him to come back, gets Will Graham back into help him. He's the one that recruits him to come back. Harvey Keitel is
always very good value for money. Harvey Keitel.
What's that?
Always good value for money.
Harvey Keitel is always a good one. Emily Watson, from Punch Drunk Love, plays the blind girl in this one.
Oh, okay.
So she's
without having rewatched it, so I'm wondering if this was the case. Now that you mention Harvey Keitel, I was just thinking, putting him alongside Ed Norton, and then Ed Norton's supposed to be, it's almost like that's not a good idea, right? Because if Ed Norton's just being himself, and then you put Harvey Keitel next to him, it's like, you're already lopsided, right? Because Harvey Keitel always brings weight with him, right? You rarely see Harvy Keitel as happy-go-lucky, right? He's just always looks like he's brooding on something.
Although, to be honest, Harvey Keitel, it was a bit against type for him. He was, he was a lot lighter than he usually is. Yeah, so I was actually surprised. It was showing a different side of Harvey Keitel that I've usually seen. He pulled it off. Yeah, his bird's not that big, so it was.
Right.
Also,
go ahead.
That's okay.
No, are you finishing up with Red Dragon? Because I just.
I just say that also of notable is Philip Seymour Hoffman playing the reporter, the Tatler reporter.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so he was quite good as that too,
and Frankie Faison is in this version again, I think.
Yes, as one of the guards, as one of the that guards Hannibal Lecter.
Right, because he was a SWAT team leader in Manhunter, right? Right.
Yeah. Also has another character actor I really like is Anthony Held.
Right.
Yeah, he plays the warden of the prison.
I actually remember him because that seemed a very Anthony Held role.
Yes, it was very much him. Yeah, so he's quite fun to watch most of the time.
No, I was going to say there is another kind of which I didn't have time to see, and so around this time as well, Michael Mann was executive producer for Miami Vice.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of one of the people who helped create Miami Vice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So apparently, in season 3, there's an episode called "Shadows in the Dark," where Crocs suddenly becomes like William L. Peterson and tries to get inside the mind of a serial killer. And apparently it's like a mini retelling of Manhunter.
Okay. Crocs?
Isn't it Tibet? No.
Crockett?
Crockett,
yeah, okay.
Crockett. So I think I'd confuse
Tubbs and Crockett.
Yes.
Crockett and Tubbs, yeah. Tubbs and Crockett.
As I remember.
Croc. Yeah. I was like, you mean the shoes? The Crocs?
Yeah. Apparently there's a episode of Miami Vice which is basically a kind of retooling of Manhunter, which I'm kind of curious to see, even though I've never been a huge Miami Vice fan. But apparently it's considered one of the better episodes.
Okay. But you didn't watch it?
No, I didn't have time. Unfortunately, I might catch up with it. Are you a Miami Vice guy or?
I think back in the day I used to watch a couple episodes, but I couldn't tell you anything about it anyway. But I don't.
This doesn't sound
familiar. It was very popular back in the 80s, but okay, well that's good. Yeah. Red Dragon in general, it wasn't a loss. I mean, it was a different movie. I mean, it was the same movie, but it was a different movie. It was the same. Like even some of the scenes were like word for word the same from Manhunter, but having different actors play the roles and having a different kind of feel. The tone was very different. It was more about like telling the story of the book than it was about having Michael Mann's vision and tone and stuff like that. So it was less tonal. It was less atmospheric, but it definitely, I think it told the story maybe clearer than Manhunter did.
Yes.
But so I think that's the thing, and also again the benchmark was, I guess, Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter, whereas in Manhunter, Brian Cox only had like 2 scenes, and they sort of cut him out of most of the movie because it was sort of like, I think Michael Mann had said that they wanted people to want more of him. And so he was very much a very small supporting role, whereas here it was, they keep going back to Hannibal Lecter a lot. It seemed to be almost, and they put him as top billing. It was almost about him, even if it wasn't about him. So there was a lot more Hannibal Lecter stuff in this version. So,
one film. Oh, go on.
No, I was saying, to be fair though, of course, Anthony Hopkins is almost synonymous with Hannibal Lecter these days.
Yes.
I'm watching it, and I was kind of like, it feels like a cartoon version of what he used to do. I mean, I remember he was very chilling in Silence of the Lambs, but it was really just like he's this, hello. It was almost like you were like he's making fun of himself playing it. Almost
became his party piece, didn't it? Like in Silence of the Lambs, it was like it was a little bit like that now and again, and of course you have you know the ending when he's I'm off to see a friend for dinner, and you know stuff like that. Okay, but no, it just really kind of went from there, right? It's just but of course you know one film was made by you know this kind of very strong visionary, almost auteurist director. And the other one was directed by Brett Ratner. So, you know, what
but definitely it really shows the power of cinema, and in terms of like how you can tell the same story in very, very different ways based on how important the director is, first of all, in terms of how a story is told. And that I think it's really interesting to see that, because there's not a lot of remakes that are as different as these two. You know, and you see a lot of things that usually they tend to be kind of a reboot or this almost the same thing, but just with new actors. It was a very, very different type of storytelling. So it was interesting.
They're different beasts, like you know. So the Manhunter is a Michael Mann film. It has a Michael Mann all over it. Whereas you would be
the Dragon is an Anthony Hopkins film.
Well, you wouldn't be able to guess. Like, is this Brett Ratner?
Yeah. The director doesn't matter in this one. It's about Anthony Hopkins and Ed Norton, whereas that one it's about Michael Mann, right? So,
apologies if you're listening, Brett Ratner, but you know, well, it's your own fault. I mean, the proof's in the pudding, right? Yeah.
So, okay, so I mean, it was interesting to watch the two of them. Anything else to say about?
Not really. Just still holds up. Go see it if you haven't seen it.
Okay, so let's move along to your reaction piece, which I've already spoiled.
Yes. So this was Black Sunday, and the connective tissue here, because of course, inter-episode, the connective tissue has to be a little stronger than loose connective, right?
Right.
So yeah, like I said, I almost went for Thief, but then I was thinking, well, then we've done 3 Michael Mann films in very close proximity. So
okay.
I was thinking maybe save Thief for another time, because it's definitely I was going to say actually it's definitely worth talking about, but then again it might be one of those films that is just brilliant to watch, but you might not have that much to say about it.
Right.
Anyway, so I was thinking, but then so I was thinking, okay, how about Thomas Harris as the connective tissue? So Thomas Harris's first book was Black Sunday, and this is the first film that was based on a Thomas Harris novel.
Right.
Another American film from 1977, directed by John Frankenheimer, as was mentioned, John Williams score, cinematography by John Alonzo, and this is a race against the clock, avert the disaster thriller, isn't it?
Right.
so you have Robert Shaw, of indeterminate accent, let's say.
I think everybody has an indeterminate accent in this movie.
But he's basically like, I'm not sure if he's Mossad or Shin Bet, but he's some kind of Israeli Secret Service commando. And
right.
yes, and basically there's word that there's a threat against the United States, right? There's some kind of threat against the United States from the Black September movement, who are kind of like a PLO or PLFL type, liberation of Palestine terrorist group. And their main guy is Bruce Dern. And Bruce Dern's kind of like, he's a Vietnam veteran who was a POW for a while, and he seems to have kind of turned him, right? He did one of those, he was filmed, as a few POWs were when they were kind of brainwashed or not by the Viet Minh to record these films where they were saying, oh, we're being held prisoner, but actually the Viet Minh haven't blamed me for, killing babies and stuff like the government want me. So he's clearly been turned, it seems like he's been turned against his own government, right?
Right.
And against his own people. So he's like a ticking bomb out there floating around, and he gets picked up by the Black September movement. And basically his plan is, luckily he's a Goodyear blimp pilot, right? As luck would have it. And the idea is to tool out the Goodyear blimp with an explosives device and kind of hundreds of darts. And the idea is to fly this thing into the Coliseum. I think it's in Miami, isn't it, during a Super Bowl game, and basically detonate it. And then all of these darts are going to shoot out and kill hundreds or thousands of spectators at the same time. So basically, and his kind of keeper, played by the Swiss Martha Keller, who in the book, because I did read the book version of this as well, in the book was, I think, Palestinian, but in the film, she's German, I think, now.
Oh, is she?
Well,
I thought she was Palestinian. Are you sure?
Well, if she was Palestinian, I think you're quite right. I think they mentioned that, but she didn't do much of a job to change the Swiss-German accent, right?
No, none of them did. That was I'd say my biggest issue with this movie is that I could not understand what accent anyone was trying to do. It was just, do some kind of accent, everybody.
Well, Bruce Dern was just talking Bruce Dern, which he always...
that's because he was American. He could just be Bruce Dern or whatever. But everybody else put on these accents, and I was like, what are these accents supposed to be?
Right. Well, it's funny, and now that you mention it, you're quite right. They do actually mention the Palestinian thing at one point, but throughout the whole movie, because she had the German accent, I was assuming, she's like from like a Bader Meinhof kind of group or something, and she's been trained in like a camp in Lebanon or something like that, Jordan or something.
I wasn't quite sure where she was from, but I do remember them mentioning Palestine at some point. So I thought I assumed she was from Palestine. So there must have been that.
Okay, right, yeah,
implication there somewhere.
She certainly was in the book anyway. So it's just the accent threw me. So so she's kind of because Bruce Dern's a paranoid nut job, basically, right? And so basically she has to keep him in line so he can actually pull this off without killing himself or killing someone else and getting caught before they can make this big statement. And there's a raid in Beirut at the beginning of the film, and that's how we know that they're planning something. And Robert Shaw almost kills her, but doesn't. right?
It doesn't. Yeah.
Scene where you
She's having a shower.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interestingly as well, watching the new Blu-ray, I assume this footage would have been reinstated. It does make a difference, but in the original cut of the film, she's nude in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember this.
Right.
This was cut out of subsequent video editions, but not the Japanese one. The Japanese one had the nudity, except with like some mosaic or something. I assumed everything was going to be put back in the Blu-ray, but no, the nudity is not there anymore. So if you want Martha Keller nudity, you're going to have to go elsewhere or get an old VHS from somewhere or something.
Right.
But he lets her go for whatever reason. Maybe he doesn't want to shoot a woman, or he doesn't think she has anything to do with the plot or whatever. But,
right.
That kind of comes back to haunt him, right, for the rest of the film. So basically, it's a kind of, it's quite long. It's 143 minutes, and it's basically the hunt is on, and you switch back and forth. You switch between Brewster and Martha Keller planning this terrorist attack, and then you switch back to Robert Shaw and his people, trying to figure out where the attack's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and that kind of stuff. And it, slowly builds to, a climax, as you might expect. And that's about it, plot-wise. What did you make of this film? It was his first watch for you, Ron.
Yep.
Yeah. What did you make of Black Sunday?
Yeah, it was good fun. It was it was what you might expect from this kind of movie. It was like a action thriller. Are they gonna defeat the terrorists before they set off the bomb kind of idea? I think the thing that sets it apart is the fact that the terrorist is an American in this one,
right?
Which is I think not too common these days, especially with the current political climate. That you would see too many Americans acting as terrorists. But yeah, I mean that's the idea, is that he sort of has turned or is become so disillusioned with his treatment after coming back from being a POW that he's wants to. He even has this real heartfelt, tearful monologue where he's explaining his motivation. Right? I just want people to remember me. I want to give them something to remember me by.
Right.
Yeah. And so
he seems almost more, when you're watching this nowadays, he struck me less as like politically motivated. He's more like an incel type, isn't he? It's like who'd kill because he can't get a girl.
Yeah, he was. I thought he was more of like a, just like a sulky kid almost. Like he's just like, yeah, well then I'm gonna blow a bunch of people up. Just to be honest, it seemed his dedication to the cause sort of was a little unbalanced with his motivation, I think.
Right.
So it was almost like he had to do this to kill all these people, but the reasoning for it was not. I mean, it wasn't religious. It wasn't, most terrorists have this sort of like, fervent, belief system behind it, right? It was just sort of like he just was butthurt and he wanted to kill a bunch of people. So.
No, I think it does ring true to a certain extent, though. I mean, certainly in the last few years, we've all these people who ran off to join ISIS, right?
Right. I guess. Yes.
For a myriad of ridiculous-seeming reasons, certainly not politically or religiously motivated.
But there's even several scenes. There was even several scenes where Martha Keller or that group were ready to call it off, like, this is not going to work. Let's just call it off. And he's like, no, we're going to do it. He's like the only one that's keeping it going, right? So he's
That's in the book. In fact, there's a whole thing. There's a few stuff. There's some stuff they cut out the book. There's the guy Faisal, who's like the other member of Black September, who's concerned that she's mixed up with Brewster, and that character. In the book, he actually sets up another terrorist attack at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Because he doesn't think the other guy... In fact, Bruce Dern's character almost kills himself at some point by drinking outdoors until he catches pneumonia. I can't remember why. And he's very unreliable. And at the end, there's like two competing kind of terrorist plots going on. The book is quite good fun, although unremarkable, I would say. It's not on the level. Thomas Harris really upped his game when he got to Red Dragon, but it's quite a fun little romp, I think.
Right.
And there's the other major thing they removed from the book as well was Bruce Dern has an ex. Actually, two. There's Robert Shaw's character has a kind of on-off kind of girlfriend nurse character, and the other female character that was cut out was Bruce Dern has this kind of ex-wife, and there's one spoiler for the book as well. There's one quite chilling bit in the book which is quite good, where there's this whole long scene where the ex-wife comes around the house to pick up something that she needs from the house, and he's like trying to restrain himself, and he can't. You fucking bitch, slut! And then he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and he calms down and everything. And I didn't want to say that. And he's got this present that he gives her, and we know what the plot is at this point. And she manages to get out the house, and she's shaken and everything, whatever. And you think, oh, okay, he's still kind of, maybe he can't control himself, but he still kind of loves her. But then when she gets to a car and opens up a present, he's given her tickets to the Super Bowl. So it's a nice little twist, yeah. But other than that, it's fairly faithful to the book. And Robert Shaw dies at the end of the book, but not in the film.
Oh, does he? Really?
Yeah, his character.
Okay.
Yeah. I really like, accent aside, I very much like Robert Shaw in this film, though.
Okay, yeah.
Like I like him in anything. He's got a real, again, a kind of weighty presence.
Weight to himself. Yeah, it does.
It's fun to watch on screen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Bruce Dern's Bruce Dern.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no stopping him from being Bruce Dern. Yeah, and you got some interesting little Michael V. Gazzo's in it. You got Clyde Kusatsu. As another thing, actually, I was thinking about the differences between the book and the film, not so much in what's in it and what isn't in it, but the book is very much like, it doesn't take sides or anything, but there's almost, is quite interesting, the book almost has no politics in it.
Okay.
Like, it's just, these people have a cause, you know that much, but basically there's some terrorists that are going to come and kill us and they have to be stopped. There's not... Right. There's hardly anything about it, there's no like talk of, one man's terrorist is another one's freedom fighter. Or,
right.
But they bring that into the film a little bit, right? There's like someone has a speech, that actually when they're talking about Martha Keller growing up in a Palestinian camp and stuff, you're quite right. And so in some ways she's your creation. And, they put up some stuff like that. None of that is in the book at all.
Right.
So I'm thinking... And also the Clyde Kusatsu character, the captain of that ship, and a couple of Japanese.
There's another terrible accent. Playing a Japanese Asian guy playing it like a Japanese American playing a Japanese character, and just like the worst Japanese accent I've ever heard.
It was very strange. But then I was thinking, well, they brought that in as well. So is he supposed to be like one of those kind of strange, like Red Army, like Japanese groups, like those people who hijacked a plane and took it to North Korea? And so it's interesting. The film, the screenwriters have obviously decided to try and bring in a bit more real world politics and stuff. Not overtly. There's a whole lot of it, but they do bring it in. That stuff isn't in the book's just more of a straight edge thriller, right? So they try and kind of thicken the mix a little bit with that stuff to varying degrees. But no, I agree with you. I expected this to be a little bit better. I remembered it being a little bit better. I mean, it's pretty good, I would say.
It was pretty good. It was a fun romp. It was it was a fun action movie, a little bit thriller, tense, whatever. But I don't think there was ever a moment where I think they were going to succeed in the plot. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't. No. Yeah. So it was, it was what you would expect from this type of a movie.
Right. I surprisingly, I mean, these films as well can, depending on your mood maybe, but they can go one of either way. Like, because it's very much a film of its time. Like, they don't really make films like this anymore where it's quite quiet, like it tells its story and it rolls out the information, but you've got to pay attention, right? Like you have to actually sit down and watch it, and if you do, it's fairly absorbing. You get into the story and you want to know how it's going to progress, and so it's very much a product of its time in that way. Modern movies of this type tend to be a bit more pronounced, right? Like just in case the audience isn't paying attention, they remind you every few minutes what's going on.
Please remember this point. Right?
Yeah, a lot of exposition. Whereas I think if you didn't pay attention, you'd get a little bit lost, right? Like you'd know something's going to happen and he's the good guy and he's the bad guy, but you wouldn't quite like what's going on now. Like a few scenes play out like without someone saying, "Okay, I'm going to need the key to," they just do it.
Right.
You have to watch it and understand what's happening. And I like that kind of filmmaking. So the finale is a bit of a it's a mixture of really impressive and shoddy. Like they use the blimp and the helicopters and by the way, I was genuinely surprised as well that you would never get Goodyear letting them use that logo.
Well, no. I read apparently that even the NFL these days won't. They actually gave actual footage of a real game, but they would never do that these days. Like,
absolutely.
Neither of those would allow their images to be used in a movie like this anymore, right? So,
this is like the exception that proves the like. If you're watching a film and someone's flying a clearly made up airline, it's going to crash, right? But if it's a real airline, you're safe, kind of thing. So this is one that
I imagine it's movies, this movie or movies like this, which stopped people from being able to use they ruined it for the rest of us, right?
But no, I was genuinely surprised. I was watching, fuck, that is a genuine Goodyear. How the hell did you'd never get clearance to, even if it doesn't blow up the stadium. The fact that it could potentially be used by a terrorist plot. No. They'd have a totally made-up company name on that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You couldn't use, Goodyear would never allow their, I mean, because now people are like, it's a Goodyear blimp. Did you see Black Sunday? It causes panic now, right? So.
And it would be a CGI blimp anyway.
Yes, of course.
But it's quite impressive in that way. But then all of a sudden it'll cut to something with rear projection, and there's like some I think there's some superimposition and stuff. I think when the blimp actually comes into the stadium, it looks a bit like it's not really there.
Right, not really there, yeah.
It kind of goes from, that's convincing to, that's not really, But it looks, they kind of pull it off, I think. It's fairly exciting. Like, every time Robert Shaw doesn't quite manage to grab that hook to put on, you are kind of,
yeah.
And because they do it quite well, because normally you get the beat of the film, right? And okay, he's going to get it this time. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
The back frame, he's lighting the fuse, he's trying to grab that, he's lighting the fuse. And they did a good job, I thought, because normally you're like, this time he's going to get it.
He's going to get it.
But he didn't for another 2 or 3 times. He still didn't get it. And I thought, I didn't. They really kind of milked that for all the tension.
Yes.
So they did a quite good job with that. So it's certainly worth a watch. But it's I'm glad I watched it again, because in my memory it was a little bit better. Like I thought it was in a slightly superior category, whereas this time I just thought, it's pretty good, but it's not that good, if you see what I mean.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
It was fun. It was fun. I'm glad I watched it. It wasn't. I don't begrudge it and like, oh God, watch it. It was fun. It was a good time. I don't think I have that much to say about it, and I don't think it's. I don't think I'd ever watch it again. Maybe, but I don't think I need to watch it another time. But it's it was a fun, Sunday afternoon movie.
Yeah, and I appreciate as well. Again, this is a kind of 70s thing. I like when you have proper like location photography and stuff, and like when they actually do go to Beirut. I like stuff like that. Where when you have a kind of international story, I always appreciate when people have gone the extra distance.
Right.
So directed by John Frankenheimer, just after he'd done the sequel to The French Connection.
Okay.
Which I don't know if you've ever seen the sequel to The French Connection.
No.
Very odd.
What is it called? French Connection 2?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, but it's not. There was actually a sequel to the French Connection book called The Setup, I think, which told the story of what happened to the heroine that they caught in the first French Connection. But French Connection 2 has got nothing to do with the sequel book. It's a totally different thing. But it's kind of interesting. It's not a. I mean, obviously, you make a connection to one of the best crime films ever made, it's gonna disappoint people, right? But it's one of those films that's kind of it's nowhere near as good as French Connection. But if you accept it on its own terms, it has this whole weird section where Popeye Doyle gets turned onto heroin. They turn him into an addict, and the film kind of changes into a totally different film where Popeye Doyle's trying to get off junk so he can go back and catch it. It's an odd, tonally weird film, but it's kind of interesting.
Okay.
But John Frankenheimer is interesting. He died back in 2002 after, I suppose, probably the most popular film later in his career he made was, do you remember Reindeer Games?
Yeah.
So that was
Ben Affleck, right?
Yeah, that was one of the last films he directed before he died, which was a pretty good crime film as well, if I remember correctly. And came out of there's a really good thing on YouTube, actually, I would recommend listeners look for. It's called, what is it called? It's called something like search for New York Live Television Archive or something like that. And basically what they've done is they've interviewed a whole bunch of people from back in the days when they were doing, pioneers of live television in the 50s. And that's what John Frankenheimer came out of.
Okay.
So there's like a career interview specifically dealing with those days. So there's another one with Sidney Lumet as well, which is quite interesting. But the John Frankenheimer interview, which is quite long, it runs like several hours, but it's really interesting. Like, it's not boring at all. It's just John Frankenheimer talking about live television in the 50s. And it's really, 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 really interesting. So if you're interested in John Frankenheimer, I would certainly, I suppose if you just look for John Frankenheimer interviews on YouTube, you'd find it eventually.
Right.
Of course he directed, like, I suppose The Manchurian Candidate is his kind of big classic film that I've ever seen, right? But so this isn't amongst his best, but he did make much worse films than this. But it's a competent film by a director who obviously knows what he's doing.
Right.
Early
in his career too, right?
No, 77.
Really?
Well, you would have been doing live TV in the 50s, right? So, and then,
okay.
So, so John Frankenheimer is kind of when I see his name on something, I'll usually, that's probably worth, rather than, I wouldn't think that's going to be brilliant, but there's a chance it's going to be at least interesting.
Worth a watch.
Yeah. Or at least thematically interesting. He seemed like an interesting, kind of intense guy, judging by because the interviews he did for the New York City Archive were like in the 90s, early 2000s, and he's quite old. And he's quite intense. You would have thought, fuck, this guy in the 50s as a young man in his 20s and 30s, I bet he was like, you wouldn't want to get in his way. Like, he seemed like a really driven kind of, doing live TV, and then on the weekends he'd like race cars and, those kind of guys.
Right.
Yeah. And yes, no, you're quite right, Ron. I have very little to actually say about Black Sunday beyond that either. So, anything to add?
I think that's about it. Again, worth a watch.
Yeah.
But I don't know much about Thomas Harris. Where else did Thomas Harris wrote this, and then he started on the Hannibal Lecter books. Did he write anything else after that, or?
He famously wrote something a few years ago. I can't remember what it was called now. It had an odd title, like Koyanora or something like that. I think it was a crime novel, and it was like everyone hated it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think there was a big gap. There's a big gap between his books, right? So I think the last one before that might have been the last of the Hannibal books that he wrote.
Okay.
Of course, they were huge, right? So I think there was like a big, expectation for the next one, and apparently it was quite the letdown.
Was it another Hannibal book?
No, it was a non. It was his first. I think it was his first non-Lecter book since Black Sunday, actually.
Oh, okay.
Because the books as well, the Hannibal Lecter books kind of go down. I mean, Red Dragon's fantastic. Silence of the Lambs is very good. Kind of the same difference in qualities I would from Manhunter to Silence of the Lambs.
Right.
Because I think Silence of the Lambs is very good, but it's no Manhunter.
Oh, okay.
If you see what I mean. I mean, I don't know
right.
where you
the
stand
movie.
on that, but yeah. Where the book is the same, I think. I think Red Dragon's great. Silence of the Lambs, fun read. Very good, but not nowhere near as good as Red Dragon. And then what came next? Hannibal, I guess. Yeah, so that was.
I think so.
Yeah, pretty good. I can read. And then the one after that, Hannibal Rising, the one about when he was a kid. And, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't think I finished that one.
And then there was the TV show.
Yeah, did you ever?
No, I never got there.
Yeah,
it was on like a to watch list, but I never got around to it. And then they canceled it. So.
I tried a few episodes. It seemed okay, but you know me and TV, it's like
right.
be extra special because of the time involved, right?
Mm.
But some people really love it, right? It has a pretty good reputation.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm not sure what the connection between Hannibal, the TV series, and any of the books. As far as I know, there's only the 4 books, right? Red Dragon, Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal, and Hannibal Rising. There might be one I'm missing out. There might be another one, but okay. I checked out halfway through Hannibal Rising, and the film version of that was dreadful. But I don't know. I think probably the TV series was entirely original, I guess.
Okay.
Just characters by Thomas Harris, that kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway, there we go.
Good.
All right, so I guess we are done.
Anything else to say?
No.
No.
Okay. It's hot here, Ron.
Okay, well, send us out with something clever.
Yeah, I see you putting me on the spot now. Why don't you do it for a change?
Let's go. What is it? I don't know. The famous Hannibal line: "Fava beans and some nice Chianti." I don't know.
Yeah, or what's the Manhunter one? The one bit actually that did provoke a slight amount of laughter. It's just you and me now, sport. Right. Me and Ron have nothing.
I got nothing. All right, thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
We tried our best. See you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.